going to put you on the spot again, but I know I can't trick you. What is the most important prophetic event in our current era?
This is great. I've written a lot about this, and there's no doubt that if you asked anybody who studies prophecy, what's the biggest sign of the modern times, it would be the reestablishment of the state of Israel. No
Yes.
doubt, 1948, 100%. God had predicted it throughout the Old Testament that they would depart out of the land for a long period of time. The land would lay desolate and be a wasteland for a lengthy period of time. And then at the end of the age, Ezekiel 36, 37, 38, it's all there. Deuteronomy 30, a whole bunch of passages. At the end of the age, he would bring them back in order to finalize and to not only finalize the program with Israel, but also to bring about the end of the age, where Jesus comes back and fixes the world. I mean, this is really what we're looking for, is for the Lord himself to come back. There is a time of judgment, a 7-year time of judgment at the end. It focuses a lot on the nation of Israel because God desires to save them. They are not in a place of salvation today. They're in a place of rejection and rebellion against the Lord Jesus, their Messiah. But that is going to change. It's one of the reasons that tribulation exists. And God's going to clean things up. He's going to save Israel, and then he's going to restore the world to the way it should be.
I absolutely agree. You get a lot of people making a statement that the church will need to go through the tribulation period in order to test and trial, and we have to be here in order to share with the lost that still need Jesus. But you're a firm believer that we will not be in part of this judgment period. Why not?
There's a lot of passages that teach us, and let me just say this up front, that if you believe in a pre-trib rapture, we are not saying that Christians aren't going to have trouble. John 16:33, in this world you're going to have tribulation, but be of good cheer, Jesus has overcome the world. So I actually think that even though we are exempted from this final wrath, which I believe is the entire 7-year period, the 70th week of Daniel, the day of the Lord, there's a lot of scriptures that teach that. But I also think that as Americans, as American Christians, I think things are going to get a little tougher for us before the rapture happens. So just because I believe in a rapture doesn't mean that we're going to be just skating wonderful until that end, because we know our brothers and sisters around the world suffer in many ways. We see this in different places. But so I think as Christians, God's going to toughen us up, but that doesn't mean we're going to be exposed to this final 7-year period of wrath.
I'm 110% behind you. And with our show, anyone watching the last almost 700 episodes, we've done different themes on what is to come and what the globalists are currently talking about. And it lines up with end time prophecy that I believe times are going to get really rather rough here in the upcoming weeks and months throughout the beginning of the next year. This election period, all of it. If you want to learn more about the corruption in a biblical sense, tune into our program every single week and share it with the masses at counterculturemom.com. We just did an election integrity series. We did illegal immigration invasion series, fighting fentanyl epidemic, how it's all combined and included with that. Truth Behind 9/11 series. It all comes together. And we need to know what's really going on behind the scenes so we understand exactly what you said, what is to come, why we have to place our faith in the Lord if we are lost, all the rest. To go back to your Israel becoming a nation in 1948, that is a very historic moment in time. When I was at Bible school with New Tribes Mission, I remember our instructor telling us that the scripture that's surrounding that would be the last generation to walk the earth, that it was around 70 to 80 year period of a generation. So that would take us to about 2028. Are your thoughts the same on that? What is your take?
Yeah, I did a thing on this one time where it's very difficult to nail down a generation, because Psalm 90, the generation's 40 years. You can look at other ones in 52 years. What about a 70 or 80, even 120 if you go back to Genesis 6? So I think that it's hard to know, at least biblically, but what we do know is that, again, Israel became a nation, 77 years, 76 years ago. So regardless of how you look at it, whether it's 70 or 100, we are approaching the end of the age. And so I like I don't set dates. It's always been a pet peeve when people do. But nevertheless, as we look around, we are in the end of the age. That Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5 that we would know the season. And if anybody doesn't recognize the season that we're in, I don't know what to tell them. Pay attention, because there's no doubt when you say, I'm 50, I just turned 50. So you think in my lifetime, I would be surprised if it was not.
I'm right there with you. So we might not know the daytime or hour, like you said. I always would tease God and say, would I know the week? You know, not daytime or hour, would I know the week?
Yeah.
Do you think it might happen over the Feast of Trumpets? Have you ever studied that and lined that up? Because that is the next feast out of the 7. It's feast number 5 to literally happen. Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, there is a I would say a modern traditional view in that we recognize that Jesus in Jesus's first coming, he fulfilled the first 3 spring feasts, Passover, unleavened bread, and the Feast of First Fruits, and then 50 days later, he fulfilled the Feast of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2 when the church was born. And so, and I mean, he fulfilled them to the moment, to the exact day. It was very, very fine tuned. So the idea is that most likely that his return, his second coming, would involve the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, as well as the Feast of Weeks, or the Feast of Booths, if you want to say it that way. And so as we look to the fall, I've always been kind of excited in the fall a little bit more than the spring. It's hard to know for sure, but nevertheless, the Feast of Trumpets does have a lot of association of resurrection with it.
Yes.
So it's a good candidate. I'll say it that way.
It's a good candidate. And if we possibly might be right, your voice might be the last voice heard on American Family Radio and our TV program if we get raptured during the Feast of Trumpets, because that is literally when you're going to be airing, which is crazy. It's unreal. Got 3.5 years in and we're out of here. Okay. As a former farm kid in Wisconsin, I was going nuts when I heard about the 5 red heifers that were flown to Israel on September 15, 2022. I've been talking red heifer language for about 25, 30 years. I'm not kidding. What is the significance of this? Do you think one of these could be the actual red heifers used in the animal sacrifice again? So
as you know, I wrote a book on this just last year. You can find it at prophecywatchers.com if you want. But it's interesting to me. Again, I'm not a sensationalist at all by any means, but I will say this. As you said, the red heifer's been around. They've been discussing it for 40 years. But 5 were flown to Israel for in a row. They were pre-qualified. As of right now, 3 have been disqualified, but they came of age November of last year. So for the first time in 2,000 years, not only do we have 1 qualified red heifer, we have 2. So I think this is amazing to me in that think about just the world of prophecy that we're in. What I would say this, they were on schedule to do a Passover ceremony back in April. But what happened was the October 7th happened, and then in January, Hamas came out publicly saying that one of the reasons we attacked was because of the red cows. So they're taking notice. So everything got put on hold.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay, so people might be tuning in thinking, what in the world are you talking about? Is it like a time where they're going to start eating beef again? Was it the size? What are you talking about, 5 red heifers? Explain to us. I know that not one hair can be of blemish or change color or, taint the red heifer in order for them to use that red heifer for animal sacrifice again, which do you believe it's going to be when it kicks off the 7-year tribulation period? Like, how does that all come together? What's the significance of even the red heifers if no one heard about that before?
Yeah, so the reason why we talk about the red heifers at all is because the Bible teaches in many places about that there will be a 3rd temple built. All we know is that there will be sacrifices being offered by the midpoint of the tribulation because they're stopped in Daniel 9:27. So we don't know whether those sacrifices have been going on for a week, a day, 5 years, 10 years. But in order for the Jewish people, the religious Jews today, to have a temple, which is what they want in order to follow the Old Testament, they have to have the ashes of the red heifer because the ashes are meant to purify not only the people, but the location and even any of the priests that would be involved in this. So they could hypothetically build a temple tomorrow. They just couldn't use it because they need the red heifer for purification reasons. That's why the red heifer precedes the building of the temple or at least the use of the temple. So the red heifer can happen anytime. It could happen now. It doesn't need to be involved with the building of the temple because once they burn the cow, they'll keep the ashes and they'll just store them away until the time politically when they are allowed to build the temple, which I think most likely is going to be in the agreement that they make with the Antichrist at the start of the 70th week.
Absolutely. As I always thought, as the pen strokes the paper, however they signed that treaty, between the Antichrist and Israel, that's when I believe a 7-year tribulation period will start. Is that what you take?
100%, Daniel 9:27. Yep.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's going back like 25 years here in my brain. It's funny how stuff gets archived in your head.
They can have a black hair on their head and a black hair on their tail, but they can't have two black hairs out of the same follicle. Okay, this is why you see the rabbis down there with a magnifying glass, because
come on.
You find that in Jewish tradition. You don't find that in the Bible, but the Bible in Numbers 19, it's there. It has to be a female. It has to be never worked, never have a yoke. It's got to be in his 3rd year. It's got to be unblemished. So those are some of the criteria you have in the Bible, but the Jewish tradition has added some details to that.
Mondo, thank you for jumping on the program today. Everybody out there, one more time, to know where to get your hands on his phenomenal book and other research materials, go to prophecywatchers.com. That whole website is loaded, by the way. I've been looking at their stuff for decades. And put in Heifer on the left-hand side to get his book, The Red Heifer Ritual. And then your Screw Tape Letters study guide and commentary on Amazon. Once again, go to prophecywatchers.com. Sign up for the upcoming several different events. Pick one that's close to you. Bring some friends, both saved and unsaved. They will leave saved. I can tell you that. So from Red Heifers to Rapture, Mondo, you're our man. Everybody out there, watch all 4 episodes this week as we dissect end times prophecy on counterculturemom.com. Watch those episodes, share them with the masses, and hurry up and get them over to your friends' inboxes, because we might be raptured here in the next couple of minutes. Mondo, keep up the excellent work. Awesome meeting you.
Thank you so much. Good being here.